you up with Rob. So I will pass on to Dee Yang from NYU, who is standing in for Kaan Ozbay today.
Okay, so hi everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I will start sharing the screen. Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Dee Yang. I'm a PhD student at C2 Smart Center NYU. I'm supervised by Dr. Kaan Ozbay, and unfortunately, Dr. Ozbay's internet connection is not very stable at the moment. So I will, present our collaborative work today for you. And the topic is new opportunities in predictive and proactive traffic safety evaluation management in the era of smart cities. So before we start, let's just quickly look at some statistics and facts. As you can see on this slide, millions and millions of people are either injured or killed every year around the world by traffic crashes. So, I mean, me personally, I just found these numbers to be very astonishing. And I think, even though, Vision Zero's initiative have greatly, improved the transportation safety, but again, there are still so much to be done in the future. And as a, group of transportation safety researchers, in order to reduce traffic crashes, we need to analyze the police reported crash data. So this is what are heavily done in the literature right now. And as some example use cases, I list them on the left. As you can see, for example, we can use crash data to identify the potential risk factors and identify high risk or high crash locations so that we can develop, corresponding countermeasures or treatment to improve the transportation safety. And finally, we can see whether or not the countermeasures it works by conducting before-after evaluations. I mean, crash data has a lot of merits, and it is very important to analyze it. But again, crash data also has some limitations, which are listed on the right of this slide. So the first limitation is the long data collection time due to the rareness of the crashes. So I mean, for example, for a specific location, right? So we don't usually see crashes every day. For example, we see like crashes several months or even several years. So it usually takes a relatively long time to collect enough crashes for our analysis. And the second limitation is called the underreporting issue, which means that the relatively less severe crashes are likely to get underreported to the police because people are maybe trying to deal with this privately. It's just to move on with their lives. And thirdly, the third limitation of the using of the crash data is that the crash data methods are also regarded as reactive. So what I mean by that is that basically we are waiting for people to get injured or killed before we can evaluate transportation safety, right? So I think, we can do better than that. So considering that, transportation safety researchers proposed this so-called surrogate safety measures to identify traffic conflict or near misses. So for those of you who are not familiar with the concept of near misses, I created two animations at the end of this presentation. So on the bottom left is a typical rear end conflict. And on the right, we have a typical crossing conflict. So just by looking at these two animations, we can see that, these two vehicles, they're sort of like close calls, right? So if one of them decided to accelerate a little bit early or, accelerate a little bit late, then these two vehicles may result in a collision, right? So these are called the near misses in transportation safety. And after quantifying these near misses, traffic safety risk can be reflected using them. And comparing to using crash data, using these surrogate events or near misses is a more proactive approach because we don't actually need to wait for crashes to happen before we can evaluate transportation safety. Okay, and oftentimes these surrogate events are extracted from vehicle trajectories. And traditionally, the collection of vehicle trajectories is relatively difficult or time-consuming, which sort of limits the use of these surrogate events in a larger scale. But luckily, in the era of smart cities, we have a variety of emerging technologies such as the connected vehicles, smartphones and drones as listed in the slide. So, and all of these technologies makes the collection of the vehicle trajectories much easier than before. So this is a good news for us, right? So we can, if we have more trajectories, we can extract these surrogate events, and then we can evaluate safety before crashes occur. Right, so this is a relatively hot topic right now. So here I listed some of the example use cases of these emerging technologies. So on this slide, I listed the NYU Connected Vehicle Pilot Deployment Project sponsored by the USDOT. For the sake of time, I will not get into details, but my colleague at NYU, Dr. Jenny Gao, will talk more about this in the afternoon. So stay tuned for that. And so very generally, we, the DOT deployed a lot of connected vehicle devices to the vehicles so that we can help reach the Vision Zero goal to eliminate traffic crashes. And very quickly to mention, there are actually 2 other connected vehicle pilot deployment projects, which are the Wyoming Connected Vehicle Pilot and Tampa Connected Vehicle Pilot. So very briefly, all of these 3 pilot tests all have, their specific, objectives and uniqueness due to the due to the uniqueness of the traffic conditions and the weather of the specific locations. And besides the connected vehicle technology, the video-based safety evaluation. So basically, we use the drone recorded videos or traffic surveillance camera recorded videos for safety evaluation is also a relatively hot topic. So on this slide, I showed our previous work done funded by AIG with NYU. So basically, in this project, we developed a relatively comprehensive methodology to analyze the raw video data for the sake of safety evaluation. So specifically, we propose a novel approach to extract vehicle trajectories and analyze safety performances, and then we use the surrogate events to do that. Okay, and so with that being said, we have a lot of emerging technologies, and then we extract vehicle trajectories, we extract surrogate safety measures, and then we can get this traffic safety risk. And after getting this risk, what can we do about that? So I think we believe that this risk quantified from the emerging technologies are suitable for the purpose of proactive safety monitoring. So specifically, we can use this risk to detect potential safety-related anomalies that may cause high traffic risk. And then after that, we can provide some sort of intervention to reduce future crashes or improve the road safety before crashes occur. So this is the whole idea that we are trying to explore right now. And so in order to achieve this objective, I believe it is really important to analyze the characteristics of the surrogate events because we need to capture that in our methodology. And in order to do that, I listed some of the key characteristics of crashes on the right of this slide, just as a comparison. So like I previously mentioned, crashes are relatively rare events, and usually take months or years to just get one crashes for a specific location. And then another thing about crash data is that the location and time information is relatively rough. So for example, in a typical crash database, right, we have, for example, for one crash, the location is like at the intersection, like this intersection, and they happened, for example, between 8 o'clock to 8:05. So we don't exactly know what happened within these 5 minutes, but this is as far as we can get, typically. So considering these characteristics, if we want to use crash data for our analysis, we often aggregate at a yearly or monthly level so to get enough crashes to develop models. But this is not the case for surrogate events. So why is that? So the first characteristic of surrogate events is that they are much more frequent than crashes. So what I mean by this is that we can usually collect a large amount of conflict data in a relatively short period of time. So such as hours or days. And the second thing is that because these surrogate events are extracted from vehicle trajectories, and we all know like vehicle trajectories are very detailed. For example, we have like the longitude and latitude, the speed, acceleration, for example, of every 0.1 second or every second, right? So this is a very detailed level of information. And then the extracted surrogate events from the vehicle trajectories also have this very detailed temporal and spatial information. So I think the question we need to ask ourselves at this point is that how can we capture the characteristics of the crash data and for the purpose of proactive safety monitoring? And in order to answer this question, so at Institute Smart Center and NYU, we propose to use this so-called functional data analysis approach. So for those of you who are not familiar with the approach, please let me give you a very quick and brief introduction about what it is. So as you can see on the picture on the right, so in this picture, the x-axis is the 12th month from January to December. Okay, and the y-axis is the mean temperature in degrees Celsius. And we have 4 curves. each of them represent the data collected from one of the weather stations in Canada. Okay, so this is how what this figure represents. So this is the typical type of data that the FDA approach can analyze. So we have a relatively consistent functional domain, which is from January to December in this example, and all of the curves measure the same thing. So in this example, is the mean temperature in degrees Celsius, right? So relatively formally, FDA is a branch of statistics that analyze the curves, surfaces, or anything else over a continuum, and oftentimes this continuum is time. Like in this example, it's from January to December. It's like on the time scale. Okay, so now how can we use this FDA approach for proactive safety monitoring? So why do we need to use that? Okay, so now, so this slide sort of give you a very quick preview of how to use the FDA for safety monitoring. And suppose we're looking at a pre-timed signal intersection. By pre-time, what I mean is that the signal timing is fixed, right? So the length of each interval, green interval, yellow, red interval are fixed. It doesn't change. Okay, so now suppose we have a focus, we have an intersection in mind, right? So we want to analyze that, and then we record the data, and then we extract the trajectories, and then we obtain the surrogate events, right? So the first thing we need to do is that we need to normalize the surrogate events by the number of vehicles. So sorry, yeah, you can see right here. So because the number of events is highly correlated with number of vehicles, right? The higher the number of vehicles, the more likely we have more conflict. So after normalize that, we can analyze everything on the same scale. As you can see in the picture on the right. So suppose, so this in this example, I just shows 4 artificial safety risk for 4 green intervals for this signalized intersection. So suppose after watching this video, nothing dangerous happened in the first 3 green intervals. You can see, and so which means that the first 3 green intervals represent sort of the normal safety risk at this intersection for this green interval, right? So they are colored as black here. But suppose that safety-related anomalies occur at the beginning, at the end of the 4th interval, which results in a relatively abnormal pattern of the safety risk, as indicated by the purple line right here. So, so the FDA approach have a way of modeling these functional curves and identify the abnormal patterns, the abnormal risk patterns. So that's why the FDA approach is I think is a proper fit to analyze this problem. And for the safety-related anomalies in this study, we try to define what do we mean by safety-related anomalies. So so in order to define this, we sort of come back to the first principle, or the way transportation safety works. So when you are driving to a signalized intersection and you are given the green signal, right? So you will be under the impression that you will travel through this intersection without any interference because you are given the right of way at the moment, right? You have the highest priority. But if something happened right in front of you and cut you off, then this will create a very dangerous, most likely create a dangerous situation, hopefully not to a crash, right? So from this perspective, we define 3 types of safety-related anomalies. So the first one is that the vehicle commit dangerous or illegal lane changing behaviors right in front of you. And the second is that the vehicle right in front of you will just suddenly slow down, without any sort of reasons. And then the third type is that you may be blocked by other vehicles in the crossing direction. So for example, this may be a leftover vehicles or illegal turning vehicles, trying to catch the line. Okay, so this is relatively a quick preview of the safety-related anomalies and how to use the FDA approach to for the purpose of proactive safety monitoring. And more specifically, we sort of adopted 2 steps in the FDA approach. The first step is called, often referred to as the functional data smoothing. So basically, we are converting the route discrete observations to the continuous functions so that we can perform further mathematical analysis in the second step. So in the second step, we, based on these smoothing functional curves, we can extract certain functional outlier measures, right? Some statistics, so that we can quantify the degree of the abnormality of all these curves. Okay, so this is just an idea of how can we use FDA specifically from the data-driven perspective. Okay, and now in order to test our theory, we collect the data at one of the largest intersection in downtown Brooklyn. Is called the Flatbush Avenue Tillery Street. So this intersection is very near the campus of the NYU Engineering School. So specifically, we'll focus on the northbound throughput direction, and then we record the drone data in the morning peak period from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. And then we extract the vehicle trajectories. So this service is actually provided by a company called the Data from Sky. So as you can see, I listed a sample trajectory right here. We have, we have the time and the vehicle ID, the vehicle type, and then the X and Y locations of this video of each vehicle. And we also have the speed and the acceleration from the longitudinal and the lateral movements, right? So this is, and then we're gonna extract the surrogate events from these trajectories to quantify the transportation safety risk and to identify the outliers. Okay, so here let's see some results. As you can see in the picture in the middle, the non-outlier or the normal transportation safety curves are colored in red, and the curves with the outliers are colored in blue. So just by eyeballing it, I think we can see that there's still some sort of a distinct separation between the normal and abnormal curves, right? So I mean, so how do we see whether or not the method works from a prediction perspective? Okay, so now let's see some results from this aspect. So I mean, again, so in this slide we have a lot of terminologies from a statistical learning perspective or machine learning perspective. So for those of you who are not familiar with this concept, so I will quickly and generally explain what I mean by each of these. So the first concept is the receiver operating characteristic, or the ROC. So basically, the ROC curve is that, so when each of these curves is much more towards the upper left of this area, the better the prediction performance. So this is in a nutshell how to use the ROC curve to see whether the performance is good or not. And for the PR curve is that when the curves are much more towards the upper right of this panel, then the better the prediction performances. Okay, so and then in this study, we also tested 9 commonly used functional outlier measures right here. So for the sake of time, I will not get into the specifics of each of these each of these outlier detection measures, but I will provide information of our paper at the end, so that feel free to check it out or send us an email about this. So just by eyeballing these curves, we can see that the RSA curves are relatively at the upper left half of this panel, and the PR are at the upper right half. So this is pretty good just by eyeballing it. But in order to quantitatively quantify the performance, the prediction accuracy of these 9 functional outlier detection measures, we often use this so-called area under the curve. So this is another measure or terminology. So just like the name implies, we are looking at what? We're looking at the area under each of these curves. So for example, if we're looking at this right curve right here, the area under the curve is just the area of this part, right? Just area under the curve. And then generally speaking, the larger this AUC value, the better the performances. And you can see here, I listed the AUC value of both of these 2 curves in the middle, in the table in the middle. And you can see one of the outlier detection measures achieves the highest AUC measures. So this is very consistent between 2 different curves. And you can see the AUC value is 0.85 and 0.8, which is relatively high from a machine learning or statistical learning perspective. So which means that the FDA method actually works in separating, in modeling the normal and abnormal curves and separating them from each other. Okay, so at this point, we have showed that the relatively novel FDA approach works in terms of proactive safety monitoring. I think the next step is to see how can we use this in a practical application, right? So I mean, can we use it for can we largely adopt this for constant proactive monitoring for the agencies or some other organizations? So I think, so here I listed a tentative steps that we proposed for this purpose. So first, we collect the real time data from the traffic surveillance videos or the drones, right? And then we extract the vehicle trajectories. We extract the surrogate events so that we can quantify the risk. And then we need to go back to the pools of historically identify normal risk functions, because we need to know what is normal at this location, right? After comparing with the historically normal risk functions, we can calculate the outlier measures and rank them from, based on some sort of a statistical, outlier measures, definition. And then after that, based on the availability of the resources at the agencies or other organizations, we can identify the anomalies, right, by setting a threshold among all of these curves. Okay. And again, for the sake of time, I didn't get into very specifics about the mathematics or some prediction accuracy evaluation stuff. So if you're interested, please feel free to check out our paper right here. And also please feel free to send out emails if you want to know more about this. Okay, so now at this point, I only talked about how to use the surrogate events for safety evaluation, right? So we only use the surrogate event. We didn't consider crash data at all. But the thing is that from a transportation safety perspective, both the crash data and surrogate events can provide information regarding transportation safety. So, and most of the studies in literature only use one of them to, just quantify transportation safety. But but the thing about this is that because they all contain part of the information, using only one of them may lead to inaccurate safety estimate and may lead to inaccurate, incorrect decision making or the waste of resources. So as at the C2 Smart Center at NYU, we propose to combine or integrate both of these data together in a robust way, so that we can get a relatively comprehensive picture of transportation safety. Okay, so here in this slide, okay, thank you. So in this slide, I listed some of the work that we've done. So this is our tentative work. So again, there are so many more to be done in the future. Again, so basically in order to integrate them together, we use these so-called joint modeling approaches in statistics. So basically, so in plain English, these joint modeling frameworks often model various outcome models simultaneously, which is exactly the case that we want to do here. And we develop some specific model, like the multivariate spatial model, the copula structural equation model. Again, if you want to know more about this, please feel free to check out our paper. So we have 3 papers. Each of them represent one of the joint modeling framework. Okay, so now finally, I think it is very important to look at the future of proactive safety management. So like I previously mentioned, the functional idea we propose or the integration idea we proposed are relatively new, and there are still a lot of potentials of using it for the CAV analysis or some other smartphone sensors. And we are happy to extend this collaboration work with more agencies and researchers or any other individuals for that matter, because at the end, we are all trying to achieve the same goal, which is to improve our road, to improve the safety of our road and to reduce the traffic crashes. So as some examples, we can maybe use the approach we developed to design proactive safety strategies. And again, for the calibration of simulation models and optimizing signal timing. And last but not least, we can also use this method for the ramp metering control. And in this slide, I listed some of our papers done by my supervisor, Dr. Kaan Ozbay. So we have a lot of expertise in all of this area. So I think and again, the future still needs more exploration. And with that, I'm going to stop right here. Thank you so much for listening. And if you are interested in knowing more or want to collaborate with us, please don't hesitate to send us an email. Thank you so much. And any question is welcome.
Thanks, Dee. Please raise your hand if you have a question or come off mute.
I have a quick question, if I can. You're using predictive data to try and analyze the vehicles as they move. Could that be applied to pedestrians as they cross the street? Could you monitor them and be able to try and predict where you have where we have problems?
Oh yeah, I think this is a good question. I think definitely, because as long as we have the videos, and then we can extract trajectories, we can definitely convert all these specific movements to some sort of a safety index, and then we can just apply the method we use to monitor a specific mode of the transportation, and including pedestrian and cyclists.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question.